psychological hell and the birth of Satan in the face of collective trauma, a psychological analysis of destructive collective cycles. The future of the world depends on our decisions today. Whether we let Satan be born in the heart of collective trauma, or save the earth from fire with the language of love, hope, and morality. Hell can be a state of living. A psychological and social experience in which negative energies such as hatred, anger, humiliation, repression, and distrust prevail. In this video, an attempt is made to analyze the concept of hell as a consequence of collective trauma and widespread psychological wounds, relying on individual and social psychology. The role of humans in creating or preventing these destructive cycles is also examined. 1. From individual hell to collective hell. In clinical psychology, individual psychological injuries can usually be identified and treated. But when psychological trauma occurs on a collective and historical level, such as war, systematic poverty, political repression, or genocide, a phenomenon called collective trauma is formed. At this level, the trauma is no longer limited to the psyche of an individual, but penetrates the subconscious of a nation or generation. At the individual level, psychological disorders can lead to depression, self-harm, violence, or isolation. But at the collective level, these disorders turn into destructive ideologies, extremist movements, and violent mass behavior. It is as if psychological trauma spreads from the therapy room to the street, and from the heart of an individual to the soul of a nation. 2. The birth of Satan on earth. From trauma to destruction, analytical psychology, especially in the teachings of Jung, introduces the concept of the shadow as a repressed and dark part of the human psyche. When an individual or collective shadow is suppressed, it returns, but not in a neutral form, but in a distorted and often destructive form. This is where we can say, Satan is born on earth. When thousands of hearts burn simultaneously with pain and suffering, smoke rises from this fire that covers the sun of humanity. In this space, human values such as love, justice, truth and empathy are marginalized and give way to dark energies. Hatred, contempt, anger and distrust become the dominant discourse of society. 3. Historical examples of collective hell. To better understand this concept, we can refer to examples from contemporary history. Germany after World War I, national humiliation. Economic crisis and war traumas made German society receptive to fascist ideology. The rise of Nazism was formed from a trauma. The contemporary Middle East, decades of war, occupation, and historical humiliation have led to the formation of extremist movements such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, genocides and racial discrimination, such as apartheid in South Africa or slavery in the United States, the psychological effects of which still remain in social structures. These examples show how psychological hells can lead to the collapse of collective morality and destroy civilizational projects. 4. The role of indifference in exacerbating the crisis. In psychotherapy, the first step in treatment is to accept the pain. Indifference to small psychological pains can provide a platform for the growth of greater suffering. When we ignore depression, anger, anxiety, or a sense of injustice in ourselves or those around us, we effectively allow negative energy to accumulate in society, just as a huge fire starts with a spark. A collective hell is created by ignoring small individual fires. Therefore, preventing psychological crises must begin with early treatment and attention to seemingly small suffering. 5. How can this hellish cycle be broken? To break this cycle, a large-scale psychological and social reconstruction is needed. Some key strategies include truth-telling. Truth is the highest form of positive energy, even if it is against ourselves. Telling the truth can be the beginning of the healing process. Concealment and denial led to the accumulation of negative energy. Substituting justice for revenge. Justice, when based on meritocracy, law, and morality, can contain negative energies. On the contrary, revenge only perpetuates the cycle of violence. The power of empathy. Empathy, the ability to see and understand the suffering of another, is one of the most important life-saving resources in collective psychological crises. Empathy training should be included in educational systems from childhood. Focus on education. Art and dialogue. Promoting values such as art education, creative expression, dialogue, and mutual respect are important tools to counter waves of hatred and violence. The role of pain in individual and collective development. One of the mistaken beliefs in today's cultures is that a good society is a society without pain. While developmental psychology emphasizes that conscious pain can be a factor for growth, awareness, and maturity. On the contrary, denying pain leads to its suppression and its return in a destructive form. So we need a kind of self-willed pain. Pain that motivates us to search, learn, correct, and transform. A society that can acknowledge pain, move through it, and find meaning will be a resilient one. The responsibility to pass on hope and morality to future generations. We are responsible to future generations. If we ignore collective trauma, we jeopardize not only justice, but also the psychological safety of future generations. We must pass on values such as truth, empathy, forgiveness, understanding, and growth in a way that enables future generations to withstand the darkness. Just as a tree burned in a fire can grow a stronger tree from its ashes, so too can humanity build a stronger and more humane world from trauma. But only if it sees, understands, and acts to heal the pain.